So continuing on with 2016 paper, IGCSE Cambridge Economics paper 2. We're going through section B questions and we're on question 4, which is on New Zealand. There's increasing demand from China has made New Zealand the world's biggest export of dairy products. Its exports of milk to China increased by 45%. More than 300,000 hectares of land in New Zealand has been transferred to dairy use from other uses, such as forestry. Opportunity cost. The increase in milk production has caused the average cost of its production to fall, economies of scale, and changes in production methods have affected the price elasticity of supply of milk. So, 4 questions. Question A. Why may less wheat be the opportunity cost of producing more milk? So, more milk. The land has been transferred from using other uses. So, mark scheme. The opportunity cost is the cost of the next best alternative foregone. Define opportunity cost. Land used for growing wheat may be used to keep cows, reducing the amount of wheat that can be produced. So more cows, less wheat. Opportunity cost. Simple. What the examiners say here. All candidates, question A, understood the concept of opportunity cost, so you could define it, but fewer were able to explain that land had competing uses, and therefore if more land was needed for milk, less was available for wheat. Okay, if you don't know that, you don't deserve the marks. Question B, let's have a look. Go to the question paper. B, explain 2 reasons why the supply of milk may be price inelastic. I've highlighted supply because I can guarantee you many students ignored that and wrote about demand. But it's supply of milk being price inelastic. So the things you want to say here are 2 points, well explained, will get you 4 marks. It takes time to produce milk. So you've got to raise the cows, graze them, so that's going to take time, so it's got quite inelastic, unresponsive. If price goes up, it's going to take time for farmers to increase the supply of milk. It may not be possible to store milk. This means it cannot be taken out of storage when the price rises, so again it's unresponsive to a change in price. It may also be costly to adjust supply. The supply of natural resources may become limited. So, the supply of milk is unresponsive. Examiner, let's see. Candidates continue to be confused by inelasticity of supply. Don't talk about demand. It is possible most people misread it, but you're probably answering the question you want to answer, not the one you need to answer. The most common reasons for supply being inelastic related to taking time. Yeah. So, questions on elasticity of supply in recent years do not show a positive trend in understanding the concept, which probably means they'll keep asking it over and over again. So, that's a topic you need to revise. Next question. C. Analyze how an increase in exports could increase a country's employment rate and inflation rate. So, it's a 2-pronged question, which means you need a 2-pronged response. Mark scheme. Maximum of 4 marks for analysis of either. So if you only talk about employment, you'll only get a max of 4 marks. You have to talk about both. Increase in exports. This will be a higher total aggregate demand. Higher demand may encourage firms to increase output. More output will improve employment. This reduces cyclical unemployment. Nice mention there of a type of unemployment, cyclical. Higher demand may cause demand pull inflation. Higher demand for wages pushes up wages. Higher demand for raw materials pushes up the cost of those. So cost of production increase, you got cost push inflation. Notice he's mentioned 2 types of employment and inflation. What does the examiner say? Question C. Candidates were generally able to analyse how an increase in exports could lead to a higher unemployment. However, If analysis of how it increased the inflation rate was less well done, so it was that cost push element that was in the Marx scheme, a common response was to state that higher employment would mean greater demand within the exporting country, and this would lead to higher inflation, which was already in the question. Some very good answers explained that increased exports meant less goods available in the exporting country, and that this led to an excess demand causing demand pull inflation. So quite a tricky question there. It separated the wheat from the chaff on that one. And the last question on the paper was, on this question 4D, discuss whether the average cost of production always decrease when a firm increases its total output. That's clearly an economies of scale question, cost of production. Always, so you're going to discuss here, evaluate, it always does and it always doesn't. That's your two-sided response. Marx scheme. Question D, discuss average cost, 8 marks. You get up to 5 marks for it will cause economies of scale, and you get 5 marks for saying it will cause diseconomies of scale. Really 4 and 4, or 5 and 3, 3 and 5. So the points for economies of scale: total cost will rise by less than the total output as the milk farmers get bigger. The firm may experience purchase economies of scale, 1 mark. Explain, may be offered at a discount price when buying raw materials in bulk. You may experience technical economies of scale, larger, more efficient machinery. You may experience managerial economies of scale, specialist staff. Explain, this will lead to lower cost per unit. You may get a better bank loan, financial economies of scale, which will lead to lower cost per unit, etc., etc. Lots and lots of economies of scale. Only mention 2 and explain for 4 marks. Then mention 2 diseconomies of scale due to, well, that's just a definition, get a point for that. You may be diseconomies of scale. This may make the firm slower to respond to changing market conditions. You may have communication problems. You may have poor industrial relations. People going on strike may increase the cost of production. You may have external diseconomies of scale, pushing up the cost of production if too many farms are fighting for the same water resource or the same land resources. So, lots of points you can make in that question. Interesting here, allow up to 2 marks for correctly labelled average cost diagram. So a diagram would have also been useful. What did the examiner say on this one? Question D, answers to this question fell into 2 categories. Some made no mention of economies, diseconomies of scale. So really you need to identify what theory underlies the question. If you simply wrote about factors that lead to higher lower costs, you're really missing the point. Others explained how as output rose, fixed costs remain unchanged and therefore average costs fell. Generally speaking, this approach did not explain why average costs change. So the focus was on economies of scale, cost per unit. Quite a few candidates gave full answers explaining with correct examples how firms could benefit from economies of scale which resulted in lower average cost, and then go on to say about diseconomies of scale with examples. So examples, the examiner is saying, is very helpful. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. Make sure you know that's an economy of scale question. You have to answer both of these questions. Read the question, is it demand or supply, and give an example, opportunity cost, using land. Thank you.